Yes.
Yep. Okay, that's helpful. So that's a good start. So hopefully you're here today to hear about some of the challenges and successes of fostering a data culture. So I guess this is really, it's the Helen Blakey view. It's my view from my experience. It would be great if any of you guys have got any things that you'd like to share as well about really driving a data culture in an organization. Everybody wants to be data driven, as we know. What does that mean in practice? What does that look like? What does that feel like in an organization? So I guess those are the things that we're going to explore today. A little bit about me. So my name's Helen Blakey. You can find me on LinkedIn. I couldn't figure out how to put the QR code on this at the last minute, so apologies. So I have a background in finance and commercial, really. So I only came into data probably about 10 years ago because data wasn't really a function in its own right. So I'm a finance director by profession. I've worked at some of those companies there. So you can see I started my career at Shell. I've worked at Michelin, National Express, that's Caterpillar truck, by the way, and also the co-op and other sectors. So I've basically crossed every single sector. I think data, in the same way as finance, is very much a transferable skill. It's about understanding the business you work in and then applying the things that you understand and know to that specific context. So that's why really I've been lucky to move across sector and understand the business challenges in each of these sectors. So I've led data strategy and culture development for a number of charities and commercial organisations. So I started my work at Aston in a part-time consultancy role, and whilst I was doing that, I was also building data strategies for various organisations, largely charities, but also big law firms. So I've got lots of experience in this area and seen this done badly and also seen this done well. But I'm currently Chief Data and Analytics Officer at Aston University and part of the senior leadership team, which is driving forward our 2030 university strategy. And that's really our North Star and what we're working towards. So you can see that's a little bit about me. The cat's just deciding to jump up, so I'm trying to get rid of it. Apologies. When I'm not thinking about data, I take my daughters to rugby matches and ski races, basically. So that's where I spend my time. So thank you for your intros. What I thought I'd do to start is it wouldn't be a data presentation if I didn't mention AI and ChatGPT and Gen AI. So what I did is I asked ChatGPT to write me a little bit of a poem about being data driven, because everybody, it's the buzzwords of the time. Every organization, every board wants to be data driven, data guided, call it what you will. So this is what it came up with, and I thought it was quite funky. I'm not going to sing it. I tried to put music to it, but I couldn't. So you can read it. In the realm of business, there's a crucial quest to harness the power of data. We're put to the test. A culture we seek where insights reign supreme, guiding decisions like a visionary dream. Leadership at the helm, steering the way, setting the tone for the night and the day, empowering teams with knowledge so vast, fueling innovation, ensuring we last. Customers at the heart, their needs we foresee. With personalised offerings, they'll truly be free. So let's embrace the data. Let's make it our guide. With a culture so strong, we'll reach heights, new heights worldwide. For in this age of information, the key to success is building a culture where data reigns, nothing less. So that was my attempt at using Gen AI to build this presentation. And that's the only element of Gen AI that's been used for this. So I guess the first question is why? Why would we build a data culture? And I think some boards often struggle to answer that question. I think they know they need data, but they don't really always see the correlation between good data and performance. So there was something called the Experimenters Index, and that really showed that companies that embed a data-driven learning culture into their organizations significantly outperform others. This is a really old chart and it goes back to 2018, but I think the value, it's still relevant today. If you look at some of these big organizations, and we know some of the what we call the FANG companies, the Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Google's, they all have used data. A lot of them were greenfield sites, so they don't have a lot of the legacy challenges that we have, but they certainly use data to improve customer experience, give them personalized offerings, ultimately generate revenue. And those are often the levers in terms of creating a data culture and being data driven. There's a few things. You can either increase your revenue, reduce your costs, look at operational efficiencies. You can use it to mitigate risk, and you can use it to generate good customer experience, which in turn generates revenue you would expect. So just a little bit of data, I guess, in terms of why we should be doing this. This is a chart from DataCamp back in 2023. I've not got the 2024 data at the moment, but it's certainly not changed significantly. And when data leaders were asked, how important are the following data skills for day-to-day tasks of employees in your organization? So this isn't data people, this is the normal people in the organization who are doing jobs on a day-to-day basis. And actually, nearly 42% of them thought that data-driven decision making was really, really important. There's a whole load of other data stuff down here. Data visualizations and dashboards, storytelling. If you look at current data, storytelling has moved up to the top. So because actually that is a subsection of data-driven decision making. But what boards are telling us is actually they see that this is really important. Another stat for you, in terms of the Harvard Business Review said that 90% of companies report that culture is the biggest barrier to becoming data-driven. I think we've got a couple of CIOs on the call and IT directors, and I think you guys could probably tell us any number of stories where organizations want a shiny new tool. They love the shiny new tool that promises to deliver everything, and the shiny new tool is invested in, it's implemented into the organization, be it good or bad implementation. And what we find is that actually nothing changes, or things might change, but actually the return on investment, which is promised in the business case, isn't always delivered. And the reason being is that actually people are still doing the same things as they were and not actually changing the culture and the mindset and the processes to actually become truly data driven. In terms of data culture, so again, just some more stats for you. I like this because I think this really shows you why you can improve your company outcomes with a good data culture. So when we talk about data culture, what do we mean? Well, it's about practices and processes basically, and attitudes with regards to data. So we look at better decision making, absolutely key, improved performance, innovation. We call our stakeholders in universities beneficiaries. So I put this slide together for the university, but actually improving the experience for our customers, our stakeholders, in our case, our students, the businesses that we serve and we operate in, but making sure that they have a better experience, and also increasing transparency and accountability in organizations. So Forrester found that companies with strong data culture had better CSAT scores and higher revenue growth than others. And actually McKinsey found that organizations that embraced data in their decision making had significant profit improvement versus the competitors. So those are pretty compelling arguments. If anybody says to you, why do we need to be data driven? Actually having some stats in your back pocket is really, really helpful. So in terms of I guess, what are the things that we mean by attitudes, practices, and processes? And I've thought about this a lot and put this really into 6 buckets. Anybody who has seen any of the other webinars that I've done, I talk a lot about data literacy, and I've done quite a lot of webinars around data literacy training, but it's really not just about training. It is far more than training. So these are the 6 buckets really that I put in. I guess, what does data culture mean for me? You need all of these constituent parts to make sure that you have a successful data culture. Are we okay so far? Everyone keeping track? I've got no visibility of whether people are asleep or we've got any hands up. Kevin, are we good?
We're all good. We're getting thumbs on the
Good.
slides. We've got nothing in the
Good.
chat at the moment, so nice and clear. Thanks,
Perfect.
Helen.
Okay, no problem. So in terms of the 6 buckets, the absolute number one thing, and for me has been our biggest success at Aston, is making sure that you've got senior leadership, sponsorship and buy-in. Anybody who knows, if you try to do something from the middle upwards and you don't have that support, it is really, really difficult to embed something in the organization. So to really create a data culture, in my view, you need to have that top table buying into it. So we have a chief executive, or a vice chancellor as we call them at a university, who is really dynamic, really driven, really delivery focused. He came over from RMIT in Melbourne, Australia, and they were an organisation that was 10 times our size. In fact, the school that he managed was 4 times bigger than Aston itself, and he had a chief data officer there who basically led them through a digital transformation. And of course, he came to Aston, and we were quite legacy. We use business objects. Anybody who knows, we still got business objects, by the way, somewhere that we're trying to get rid of. But we had all these legacy tools. Access to data was really difficult. It was really hard to get good quality data at the right time to the right people. So Alex came in. I'd been in the organisation for about a year trying to do this really from the middle upwards. So I came in reporting into the COO, but nobody really got what data was. And despite my best efforts of trying to explain, people weren't interested. There wasn't really the need for change. And that's the other thing with change management. You've got to have a need for change, and people have to want to change. So there was no real desire until Alex came in. So of course I was in my role anyway. So I set about building a data platform, building out some data products, and found the champions in the business, what I call the cheerleaders, who really wanted to do something with data. And we just started building out and putting data governance wrappers around those as we built them out. But when Alex came in, he really had the vision. We set on a journey for the first year of developing our 2030 strategy. That was co-created by the senior leadership team. So I was an integral part of that. And that was absolutely great, because what we had was a clear business vision of where we want to go as a university by 2030. And that really enabled us to link our data strategy to the business strategy. And that is absolutely key. You've got to have the senior leadership buy-in, you've got to have the people around the table who understand it, but also then you need to be able to link your data strategy to that business strategy, so that it's not just somebody's pet technical project, but you're really driving business outcomes every step of the way. So how do you deliver tangible business outcomes with everything that you do as a team? So that leadership and management was absolutely critical for us. The other thing that was also critical is creating a cadence of performance management. Now, performance management to a lot of people tends to invoke these conversations between an employee and a manager where things are not going particularly well. What I mean by performance management or performance measurement is really making sure that you can quantify your actions that you're taking. So as an example, our 2030 strategy at Aston, to make sure that we knew that we were where we were on that journey and how we're progressing towards the outcomes and the goals that we've determined, we needed to develop some, dare I say it, KPIs. I don't like to use the term KPIs because we have 54 of them. And if you've got 54, they're not really key. So I tend to call them measures of success. So these are the things really, they're measurable, tangible outcomes to determine whether we're achieving that strategy and actually holding people to account for that. So that's really what I mean about having this cadence of performance measurement, managing our strategy against those measures which we track, and the data team build products to determine how we're doing, both in terms of what we call the lagging indicators, the outcomes, the 54 measures of success, but also building lead indicators as well, so that people know where they are on that journey at any point in time. And that's the way that we've managed to give people a reason to develop that data culture. Everybody has a part to play in that strategy. Everybody has a part to play in achieving these measures. So this is something that's really company wide. And I think finding that hook is really, really important. Likewise, within the internal team, we also make sure that as we're building out data products, we measure our success as well. And we're leading by example and we're walking the talk, so that we provide regular updates in terms of our development and what we're delivering, our advocacy scores and what our customers think of us, etc., etc. So just making sure that everything is, you've got evidence for all of the things that you're doing essentially. Interestingly, an organisation I worked at before I was at Aston, one of their key values was show me the evidence. And that was really, really helpful, because if you ever went in front of the CEO, you would never go to him with a proposal without actually justifying why you're doing that, using data. And that's really the environment that we've got at Aston now. Our strategy, we have quarterly reviews with all the executive. I sit with the executive every quarter and the Vice Chancellor, and we go through every department and how they're progressing. And we use all of the data products that we've built, which is phenomenal and hasn't happened in any organisation that I've worked in previously. So those are the first two: sponsorship, performance measurement. The next few are things that are probably core to any data team. So data quality and trust. There's no point actually trying to create a data culture and training people in how to be more data literate if the quality of your data is poor, because actually you lose credibility from day one. So actually, to do that, the way that we've done it is, as we build out data products in the organization, we put what I call a data governance wrapper around them, rather than having this huge data quality program where you try and address every single issue. We take firstly a risk-based approach based on any critical data assets that we've got, and make sure that they're of good quality. But the second approach is, every time we build a data product, we then make sure that we've got the relevant things in place. We know who the data owners are. We bring the data stewards along. We make sure that we've got product owners who train and make sure that the adoption for those products is key. So those are the first three. The fourth one is probably the one that everybody starts with when you talk about data culture. It's really everybody jumps into, let's train everybody on data literacy. We have embarked on a data literacy program over the last 3 years. We've had probably about 400 people now on the data literacy program. And really what that aims to do is to provide people with more confidence in using data. I don't like the term literacy. Anybody who knows universities, if you try and tell an academic that they're not literate in something, or they're illiterate, believe me, it doesn't go down particularly well. So I've tried to change the language somewhat, and we talk about actually being more confident using data. And what that does really is recognize that everybody's on a different baseline. Everybody's at a different starting point. We're not there to train everybody to be a data scientist, but what we really want to do is encourage people to be more curious of data and create more a culture of critical thinking where actually people are asking those questions of the data or actually anything that we do in the organization. So if we're going to we have a project that is going to kick off, then somebody is saying, so what does the data tell us? What research have we done? Not using data on its own, but be data guided as opposed to data driven, because of course gut feel is really important, and lots of people have a lot of experience that they bring to the table. So let's not lose that experience, but let's also balance that with using data. So that's really what we've been trying to do through this data literacy program. So it's absolutely key. It's not the end for us. What we're trying to do now is really build a data culture program after we've had we have 4 modules of 4 weeks each over a 32-week period. The whole of our senior leadership team have taken part in the data literacy program, which wasn't my preferred approach, I have to say. My approach is very much, we try and adopt an agile mindset. So it's very much a think big, start small. So we've got the big vision, we've got the strategy, but we've been building out data products as we go, and then trying to not only put that, what I call the data governance wrapper around the products, but also make sure that people have the right skills and confidence to use that. Unfortunately, Alex, the Vice Chancellor, when he came in, he saw what I was doing and he said, this is amazing. I want the whole of the senior leadership team to go on this. Now that went from a POC of about 20 people to a POC of 120 people, of my most critical colleagues in the organisation and the most senior people. But actually that was quite powerful, because what that enabled us to do is really enabled the senior leadership team to walk the talk and advocate for why this was important. And we really got that buy-in by working from the top down. So now we do a combination of both. We're going from the top all the way down through each of the roles, but we're also, as we build out data products, if that people haven't had this training, then we're bringing them in to do the training. What we found is after they finish the training, it really drops off a cliff. So there's nothing really for people in the organisation to access. So we're currently building a data culture program where we've got data champions in the business who can talk about what they've been developing. We've got forums that we're setting up. We've got blogs that are coming out to the people who are on the program. So we're really trying to build out a lot of different opportunities, I guess, for people to learn more. Also, in terms of if people want to learn more about data and do this on in a deeper way, we have data apprenticeships available as well. So we've got various people who are on data apprenticeships, recognizing that that isn't for everybody because it's quite a big commitment. It's 20% off the job training, but there's a pathway for people to be able to progress. The other thing that we're also working on is making sure that actually, as we recruit people, we know what we want from people in terms of that data confidence and the data knowledge which is relevant for their role. So we're trying to put descriptors in role profiles, working with the HR team to make sure that new roles coming in, they automatically have some of these skills, because these are skills that every role needs. It's not just for data people, it's for business people to be able to use data. So that's the 4th thing. 2 more, and then I think in terms of timing, I'm probably not going to go through a lot of the other slides because I've probably covered it all in this one slide, in all honesty. But the next thing is access and use. So there's no point having training people and having all the performance measurement in place and having advocates and having good quality data if actually you can't access that data in a reasonable way. I'm not a tech person. I don't write code. I'm one of the few CDOs. If you look at most CDO job descriptions, everybody needs to code in R or Python or even SQL. I don't do any of that. I never have done because of my background. But actually what we need to do is make sure that people can access these insights really easily through good quality tools. There's loads of tools out there these days, and I don't get excited about all the new technology that is available, but we use Power BI just because we're a Microsoft house. We've got an Azure cloud-based data platform, so Power BI sits on the top of it. It's great for the finance people. Being from finance myself, I know that you can't extract them from Excel easily. So it's probably the most similar to using some of the Microsoft stack. So making sure that you've got good access to data, the right data at the right time to the right people is absolutely critical. And the final piece is communicate. Data people, tech people don't like to communicate their success. As an example, you know, we built a business case and a data product last year so that we could actually get real-time information for our students during clearing. Anybody who knows anything about universities, as soon as the A-level results come out, our phone lines go crazy as people try and find places at universities. And we were taking a lot of time to come back to people, and we had spreadsheets all over the place. We actually developed last year real-time information using our Power BI dashboards. And none of my team actually shouted about it. It was the biggest thing we'd ever done, but they didn't think to actually communicate. So we try and communicate a lot about what we do, you know, things like these webinars to actually share experience, looking at both internally and externally. Most of the town halls over the last year, I was dragged out by the Vice Chancellor to talk about what we're doing in terms of data, but that's really enabling people to understand the art of the possible and think about, well, actually, you've done that, I would like this, etc. So that was really, really helpful. And then, of course, external communications as well. So we make sure that we are applying for awards that might be out in the marketplace, and just really to demonstrate and showcase what we've been doing as a university. So I'm going to stop there. I've got loads and loads of stuff, but I'll just pause at this point and stop sharing my screen to ask if there's any questions so far.
Yeah, I think we've got a raised hand and we've got a question in the chat. So Pramila, if you want to ask your question first, mate.
Yeah, hi, Kevin. Hi, thank you. Hi, Helen. Yes, no, very interesting, and thank you so much. I'm really enjoying the session. So I had a couple of questions actually. So first, you were talking about the performance and management section where data products were created for the KPIs or I mean, you didn't like to use the word KPIs because you had many of them, but I imagine you had, did you create data products for every one of them, or could you speak a bit more about it? It sounds interesting that you created data products for each of them.
So essentially, we built one data product, which was a measures for success dashboard. So that's a one-stop shop for all of our executive to go into that dashboard, and they can see for each of their areas all of their measures of success. So if you're the executive dean from the business school, for example, you would go in and you would see all of your measures all in one place. So it's almost like your balanced scorecard on a page, really. And then if they want to look at their lead indicators, then they can just click on another link, and that takes them to, and then what is driving the performance of that statistic. So for example, one of our measurable outcomes is our NSS score, which is our national student score. So that's when at the end of every degree, a student is asked to rate Aston University in various areas. Now that's really important for us because universities it's all about reputation. Our students come to us because of our reputation, and we need to make sure that our reputation is as good as it can be. So that NSS score is really important. But actually, that's once a year. What about every time? How do we know what that's going to be throughout the year? So what are the lead indicators? So what we do is we evaluate at the end of each module, for example, and we can see those module scores. So if you are responsible for that program, you will go into the lead indicators dashboard and you will see your module scores, and you can start tracking that. And that's where you can actually start to determine whether you need to take action or not. If the score is not as it's expected, then you can take action to influence the NSS score. There's not always a correlation, but that's certainly the an example. Does that help to answer the question?
Yes, yes. No, thank you very much. And just a second one. Sorry, I don't want to ask too many, but
That's
just
okay.
another one. So for each of the roles, so regarding the training and increasing the data literacy in the company. So one of the things I was thinking about is, in order to build that in any company, kind of you have to kind of have a data, for each role you have to have a connection to data, isn't it, for every role in the company, to build that, create that data literacy, because they will take the training and then forget all about it. Obviously, if it's not applied, if it's not used in any way in their day-to-day role, then obviously that is all gone to waste. So I think one of the things is how to apply that data literacy in every role in the company, so that the entire company is literate, isn't it? I think that is challenging, I think, uh,
Yeah, I agree. I
especially
agree
when you're
with you
changing it. Yeah.
completely. And I think not everybody in our organization is going to use dashboards, that's for sure. But actually, if you think about it, every time somebody uses a sat nav, they're using data. So that they're
Yes.
using, if you look at all of the, generally whatever we do on our phones these days is using data. So even if they're not using it actually at home, they might be using it in their life. So actually, but people don't realize that. They don't always think about the fact that there's data behind that, because it's I think people think about data as almost maths and STEM subjects, and there's a lot of taught fear really around data. And I think actually demystifying data is really important. Certainly as part of the training, what we do is the first module is foundations of data, and a lot of it is demystifying things like this and giving them examples of where they do use data in their day-to-day lives. Even if they'll never build a dashboard in their life and they'll never go into Power BI, what they can do in their role is actually say, okay, well, where is the evidence? What have we got to back up this decision? And being able to storytell with data, that's another thing that we work on in the fourth module. How you actually tell compelling stories. So you might not use data, you might not prepare data yourself, you might just be a consumer, but everything we do generally is using data, and it's sometimes about actually being able to tell the right story with that data to influence people to do the things that you need them to do in an organization. So it's different lenses. I think what I'm saying is, Pramila, for different,
Yeah.
I hate to use the buzzwords personas, but there are lots of personas in the organization. So it's making it relevant to those personas, whether you are, the canteen lady or whether you're actually a developer.
Okay. No, sounds great. Thank you very much. Thanks, Helen.
Then, Helen, we've got a really interesting question in the chat, which is, how can you kind of influence and drive a data culture if you're not in your position? It's not your responsibility to do that. You don't even have a leadership role. You're just somebody that recognizes the importance of it, and you want to change the attitude of it across the business. Do you have any advice to people like that?
I think it's hard. In all honesty, it's a hard slog, and I think tenacity needs to be your key skill to do that. But I think what you can do, you don't always need to be in the fortunate position that I'm in. I think go and find your cheerleaders. Go and find the people in the organization who get this and who want to change this. And I guarantee there's probably somebody in a position somewhere. You will have to have lots of coffee and cake, I think, to meet people and discuss with people. I always am a great advocate of coffee and cake to have these informal conversations, but find the people who actually get this and then work to the people who can influence some of these decisions. And then eventually I think you'll crack it. Find a way to celebrate your success. Coming back to that 6th point, the communication. If you start communicating what you're doing and people like it, you can almost try and get some tribal leadership then and get people on board and more people on board, and everybody hates FOMO. So if you're doing something really great for somebody, then shout about it and then more people will come along. One of the most powerful things actually, so the data literacy training that we did, it was hard to get the 100+ leaders on board. They were told to do it by Alex, so that helped because when you've got 3-line whip to be on the course, that certainly helped them turn up. But actually, when they were there, the power was in the chat on those there were live classroom sessions. So actually just getting people to talk about things that are data related, peer to peer, was really, really powerful. So sometimes informal sessions as well, just bringing people together can help. I don't
Thanks,
know if
Helen.
anybody else has got any views on that and whether they've found anything that's successful.
We'll move on to the next question then. So this might be something where we share resources afterwards, but a lady on the call wants to know, when you mention training and skills, are there any particular courses or recommended literature that you'd point people towards?
I guess it really depends on your organization, because it always has to be relevant to your culture. I think there are lots of Coursera courses, DataCamp courses, Cubicle, lots of organizations like that who do basic data literacy courses where people can actually just dip in and out and take those. They're great for the people who actually want to do this and they're almost at the top right of the change curve. The take up for online courses is typically very low, so it's about 30% on average. So I think that's the challenge. If you want it to be something that's open to everybody, then the reason I chose to work with the Data Literacy Academy I work with, the reason I chose to work with them is because I liked their approach. They offered a change management element to it as well. So rather than just, yes, it's a SaaS-based platform, you go in and you complete modules and take assessments, the classroom learning in those live sessions have been absolutely key for us to get engagement. So yeah, I'm not, I should be getting commission for the Data Literacy Academy. They're one of the few in the market who actually do those live classroom bases, and that's why we chose them. They're also local as well to us, which was another reason. So that's, I guess, for the masses. There's also organisations that work with senior leadership teams as well, recognizing that the first thing in terms of my advice of building a data culture was about leadership and getting leadership on board. Sometimes you need to start with the top. So the mass approach isn't always relevant, because as I think one of our colleagues said earlier, if you train people and they've got no reason for it and people can't explain why, then they just lose it and they don't apply it. So actually working with your senior leadership team is quite helpful and quite useful. I've worked with a company called Synergore. They were actually the company that I did some consultancy with before joining Aston, and I've worked with them in actually delivering data culture pieces, but that's more about one-to-ones with execs and speaking to the exec and the boardroom, a lot higher level because it's more senior people like myself and other chief data officers who've been there and done that, basically working with your CFOs and your CEOs to really encourage them to understand what makes a successful data culture. So I think those are the two things I would recommend. The senior leadership bit through an organisation like Synergore, I'm sure other consultancies are available, and also Data Literacy Academy.
Yeah, no, thanks, Helen. You mentioned as well that you use apprenticeship schemes, and Reed has an apprenticeship business that offers that kind of data boot
Right.
camp as well, for people in data roles, but also aimed at the business user, to upskill them and potentially cross-skill them into data roles, or just give them that extra toolkit for their day-to-day jobs.
Feel free to send that across.
Yeah, your hand was up for a while, indeed. Did you have a question, mate?
Yes, I did. Hi, Helen. What I just wanted to know, you've sort of answered it in sort of like a long roundabout way, but you mentioned stuff about, you know, how your upper level management you had to get them to use dashboards, and they could all go into their business functional areas and see how they're performing. And then obviously one of the key pillars for you for successful, you know, having a good data culture is communication. What I want to know is, when you are adopting and progressing with change, and communication is one of your enablers, how do you drip that down in a message from high level to, for lack of a better word, the peasants, the doers, because that is one thing I always find as a challenge. Yes, we know adoption is good. Yes, we know the system is going to be great. Yes, we know it's going to give us all the bells and whistles. But when it comes down to crunch time, there's always just that barrier of resistance, where it's like, okay, you've done all the work you need to do. I've given you what it is you need to do to get you to where you want to be. But there's just still that little bit of, no, I'm not doing it. And I wonder if communication is the issue in that scenario, or is it something else? Or is it a different way of thinking about the problem for the issue?
It's always a challenge, isn't it? I think we see that at Aston. I think communication gets so far and then suddenly it stops. And I don't know why that happens, but it tends to get to around middle management, and then sometimes either the information just doesn't get through, or it gets through in a slightly different way with the not the context associated with it. So recognizing that, what we've tried to do is almost do this two-way approach in terms of the data literacy training. So we've got people who are using our data products who are people on the ground. We've got those guys actually on the course, as well as the leaders, so that we work with those guys to be the champions almost for why we're doing this. We're not there yet, in all honesty, you know, in terms of where we want to be in terms of our data culture maturity. We're certainly not there. And I think one of the things that I have realized is that you just have to keep communicating, never ever stop communicating. There's never, I always say, it's a journey, it's not a destination. You will never ever get there. You have to keep communicating. One of the things that has been really powerful for us is, I used to get rolled out for every town hall. In our last senior leaders away day, I wasn't even involved, but there was a lot of data involved in that, and that's because the execs were actually presenting the products that my team had built and demonstrating why they should use them. And that, I think, is the key to the success. Making sure that your leadership team are also doing that job for you, because you can't do it yourself. You just can't. It's impossible. You've got to have those people supporting you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks. Ben.
Yeah. Hi, Helen. Just from a kind of reflecting back on it, I know you sort of mentioned that not how you would have done some things and anything else. Is there anything you would do differently now, looking back at it? And you know, if you had a chance to sort of sit down with the sort of the leadership people and say, we should have done it this way, this would have been a better result.
That's always the question that I dread, you know, in all honesty.
Sorry.
in many organizations, I've had absolutely, we should have done it differently. And I think for me here, I think the approach that we've taken has been helpful. So I probably wouldn't change the specific approach. We're obviously learning along the way, so we're tailoring the content that we're giving to people. I would have personalized the learning probably in a better way than we have, because of course when we're training 200 people on this cohort. When you're training 200 people, you cannot personalize. So the Data Literacy Academy talk about personalization. It's not, you can't. We've got two tracks. We've got people who want to learn Power BI as an extra module and people who don't. So actually, how do you deal with that and maintain the engagement? That's quite difficult. And I think the second thing is also thinking about what comes after the training as well, because we kind of fell off a cliff knowing we were going to fall off a cliff, but we really needed to have something in place. Now, a lot of that was due to the fact that I don't have resource. So my data team is tiny. I've got a team of 7. We look after governance, platform, analytics, and then data culture. If you look at some of the big organizations who do this properly, the Lloyds Banks of this world and the Admirals, they've got directors of data culture. That's their full-time job. I'm doing it as well as managing everything else in an organization that's going at 200 miles an hour. So actually, but maybe thinking about some of those things up front and who could do that for me would be helpful, because I think it's very hard to get your technical team to actually think about cultural change as well. It's just naturally, it's not their skill set. So who could I get within the organization to help us start to drive that?
Thank you very much for that. Appreciate it.
Cool. We've got a few more minutes. There was a hand up which has dropped. I don't know if that person still wanted to ask a question or not.
That was me, Kevin. I'm not sure I'll jump in with it. I'm not sure it's really relevant. It's more around kind of the back end management, but there's been a lot of talk around the communication. I think I agree that communication is a big barrier. And it's like things change, don't they? As they go down the line, they get switched around a little bit, and the understanding kind of drops. So I do think that's a big barrier. But I also feel like there's an element of, where is the onus on the users to where is the onus on the team that manage the data, as in terms of, is there keyword functionality, is there data tagging? Because you cannot, like you said, you can't personalize training for that many people, and regardless, they are using the data whether they think they are or not. So where have you split that? Where have you drawn the line as to what is a responsibility of the data teams and the IT teams to manage that data effectively, and where is the onus on the teams that are using that data and feeding into it?
That's really, really interesting. I think anybody who knows me in the organization will know that probably my favorite phrase is that data is a team sport. It isn't the data team's responsibility to do all of this. So every time we build a data product, because we work in an agile way, we get all of the business owners in a meeting, and we go through with them what our role is and what their role is and what their responsibilities are. I talked about the data governance wrapper around our data products. So some of the things that you mentioned there, that's where these things will happen and roles will be assigned. We have data owners and we have data stewards, and that's the responsibility of the data steward to make sure that, for example, for every product that we have, we've got a business glossary. We know what all of the data definitions look like. We know who the data stewards are. We're not the first line of support as well for that product. If there's a contextual or a question on that product, then actually the business owner is the first person that is the line of support, and they're almost our data champions. So we kind of do it in that way. Is it black and white? No, there's a little bit of grey, and sometimes I think we all have to recognize and help each other. But we try and make sure that everybody sees it as their responsibility. That's hard because it never has been previously. I always liken it to kind of, you go into a restaurant, they order from the menu and they sit there and wait for the meal to arrive. And it's like, guys, this is a barbecue. You bring your own, you do your own, everybody's got a part to play in this. You can't just sit there and wait for us to do everything. You have a responsibility. It's your data. It's not my data. I don't own the data.
No, of course. But I mean, I think there is a level of reliance that users have on teams such as data and IT to have functional systems that manage that data. And I think especially if you're acquiring new teams or new businesses all the time, then obviously that data changes drastically all the time. So I think it's just it's such a massive subject, isn't it, about getting a robust system and trying to avoid too much siloed data, because that's what happens. You end up having all of these different systems that are feeding into different data streams, and then you're left trying to manage all these different data streams and manage all these different people that tell them it's their responsibility, and I think it just becomes, I don't know, messy. So the consolidation piece, and where possible that single pane of glass view, is really important, I think.
Yeah, and certainly, I mean, we're not as complex as when you're buying multiple companies, but we did have siloed systems. We didn't have an enterprise data warehouse. We've got an enterprise data warehouse where you bring all the data in together now. So we have got that single source of truth. We haven't, some of what you're talking about is master data management, essentially. And we haven't really been on that journey of MDM and what that looks like. But I mean, some of that's key, isn't it? When you're bringing all of these data sets in, making sure you've got a very, very clear master data management strategy behind that as well.
And I think having that would have a massive positive impact on data culture, because it would make implementing that data culture a lot easier, because the onus you are trying to put on the user base is a lot easier for them to manage when that's already in place. So
100%. Yeah, 100%. And that's that bit in the, I guess, when I talk about data quality and trust, all of that stuff that you're talking about, Natalie, sort of fits in that box for me.
Yeah, that's why I put my hand down, because I knew what I was about to jump into was not really data culture. But thank you, it was a great talk. Thank you.
Oh, excellent. Well, yeah, reiterate what Natalie just said there, Helen. Thank you very much for your time. I think the fact that we had such a decent turnout and everyone stayed beyond the hour shows that it really is a topic that's like at the top of a lot of people's agendas, especially with all this talk about AI. Everyone knows you need to get the data in place in the first place, but that's, as they say, it's a team sport, isn't it? It's not one person's responsibility. It's something that we all have to be accountable for, making sure that you put the good stuff in to get the good stuff out.
Exactly.
So yeah, we run these sessions at least once a month for the data practice. So if there are any topics that you guys want to have more conversation about, or anybody on the call wants to volunteer to step forward and lead one of these sessions, let us know. Otherwise, thank you very much for your time and have a great afternoon.
Thanks,
Helen.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers, guys.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.